Well, I'm sure everybody has been wondering what's been going on with the Bluick, and there's a long story, so get settled in for this. I've had it, and it's still misfiring and all that, so it was time to do the Carbinator. Now, this was all going to be, just a glorious day. I was going to go and get another Carbinator and put it on, and everything was going to be great, and it was going to fix the misfiring problem and all that. It doesn't work out that way, of course. Anyway, the long story goes where I looked on, what was it, AutoZone, and they had, or no, Advance Auto, they had a Carbinator. So I bought a Carbinator and a fuel filter just in case. Turns out didn't need the fuel filter because the new one came with it. And there was some confusion because they had two Carbinators listed. Could be this one, it could be that one. And based on the numbering that I saw on the carb, which is on the car, which I believe is actually original, I thought it was going to be like the C, but it was actually the M or something like that. And I verified that with a number of Carbinator shops. So anyway, I bought the carb from Advance Auto. And that came, and then I was going to go out to my dad. I had the carb in the back seat, and I went out to the Bluick and went to go to my dad, and everything turned to shit after that. Basically, I was going to record bits and pieces of it here and there. I only ended up getting one little video, which I'm going to put in right here, which was leaving from the house to go to my dad, and the Shetalian was outside right next door fucking around. Anyway, let me show you that first, and that was all the video I had from that day. Somebody's outside right next door, and their windows are open. Today's the day to get the Carbinator done. So let's see if he's going to cause any shit. I just want to make mention here that I've never seen that SUV before, but it was a pretty hot day, and he's out there, all four doors were open, and he unbolted the seats and had them out on the lawn. Who knows what the fuck he was possibly doing? Didn't even fucking flinch. Well, anyway, I got to my dad, and we went to put the Carbinator on. I didn't get any other video of this. And first of all, the carb didn't want to fit properly when we mounted it up on the engine. And this is a long story coming because, anyway, we mounted it up on the engine and it didn't sit straight on the car, on the intake. It didn't sit flat. It rocked like 1/8 of an inch. I said, this is never going to work. And not only that, but if you went to move the throttle, it was absolutely stuck in place. Take it off the car, it moves fine. Wrong carb? I don't know. It was odd. So anyway, we ended up putting the original carb back, or actually not really. See, what happened was we went to take the old one off, and connected is a hose to the front of the carb that goes around to the back of it where the PCV valve goes in the engine. Now, there's a grommet in there, a rubber grommet, and the PCV valve sits in that. The hose goes on top of it, and then it loops back to the front of the carb. So my dad's in there, and we're pulling stuff, and we said, looks like it's going to be tight to get the hose off the front of the carb because it was like buried under it. So we said, let's just pull it off the PCV valve and, we'll take the hose off, put it on the new carb, put the carb on, and then we're all set. So we pulled the PCV valve itself rather than pulling the hose off. I don't know why that was the right idea at the time. It just felt like the right thing to do. My dad pulled it out. Anyway, we monkey around with all this stuff. The new carb isn't going to end up working. So we decided to put the old one back and then figure out what was going to happen after that. Well, we went to put the PCV valve back in, and it would not fit. Now, the end of the valve has like a barb on it that has to fit in this grommet, which is in the engine, in the top of the, intake there. So it's not fitting. If you were to push down really, really hard, it looked like it would fit. But if you tried to go at an angle and try to like work it in, there was no way. It wouldn't budge. We don't know how they got the thing in there. So the idea was born, and this was after baking in the sun for many hours working on this thing, that we were going to put the valve there, hold it perfectly straight, put a socket on top of it, and just tap it, and it should pop in. Well, it did. It popped right in with the grommet into the engine. We were absolutely fucked. Now, fortunately, didn't start the engine or anything, so if you can get it out, then you should be all right. Well, getting it out was the problem. The valve came out easy with a magnetic pickup tool. That was easy enough. The rubber grommet bounced around in there, and we couldn't find where the hell it went. Now, in there is what's called a valley pan. This is a V8 engine, so you have the V with the 4 cylinders on one side and the 4 on the other side. And there's a pan on top of that where the push rods are. Okay? So this grommet was sitting on that valley pan somewhere. So we said, oh shit, what are we going to do? We tried looking with a flashlight. That wasn't working, so we went to AutoZone and got a borescope they have for that you can rent, so to speak. You pay for it, and then when you're done with it, you bring it back. They give all your money back. So we went, and that was a shit show. I'll spare the details on that. Looked around, still couldn't find it. This, that, and a third. And anyway, we gave up for the day. So the Buick won't run without the PCV valve in there, and I'm not going to take it home because it's still, the old carb is not even mounted up at the time, and not to mention it actually stalled on me going out there, just sitting at a light. So, I didn't want to do that. Well, fortunately, the whiff was off, so I called her. She drove all the way out to pick me up, and I went home, and I left the Bluick over there. So meanwhile, like a week or so went by, and finally we said, all right, this carb isn't going to work, and my dad was working on trying to find the PCV grommet, and he finally found it. And after getting a long hemostat that I picked up at Harbor Freight and going out there to get the old carb, I'll get back to that in a second, he was able to retrieve it, and we pulled it out. Now, meanwhile, I had already ordered a new grommet for it, figuring that the old one wasn't going to fit. Like, maybe they had the top off of the engine and they put the valve in then, knowing that this could be a problem. I don't know what the deal was, but anyway, I went out there with the new grommet, and I picked up the old carb and the new one that I bought from Advance Auto. Now, went to return it at Advance Auto. So I go into Advance, and I say, I need to return this. And the guy who was there who helped me originally was, I had to special order it, and that's fine, neither here nor there. The guy looked like George Jefferson. But, I didn't want to say anything. And he was funny, because I asked him about the grommet, and that he ordered for me. But he said, I have grommets here, and he showed me what he had. I said, no, none of these are going to work. I need that actual part that you have on the website. So we put an order in for that, and I picked it up later on with that. Well, meanwhile, in my travels, I go to return the thing. I had a chiropractor appointment, and the place is on the way. So on the way back, I stop in, and I said, George, his name is Alex. I said, George, I need you to return this. So he gets the thing, and it has like an online number, and he punches it in, and it searches for like 30 seconds, and it doesn't come up. And he says, you can't return this at the store. You got to mail it back, because it was a mail order thing originally. I think the lion is naugating around. Anyways, So I was dismayed, but I figured, all right. So I came home and I called them. Thanks for calling Advance Auto. Please hold. Your call is very important to us. Well, if it's that important, pick the fuck up. Don't put me on hold. They put me on hold for 20 minutes, at which point the phone system basically said, sorry, we're too busy now. Call back after 6. Fuck you and die. Click. And hung the fuck up. So I called back. Another 20 minutes. Sorry, too busy. Fuck you. Die. Click. Called back, and then I find on their website they have an online chat. So I waited around another 20 minutes for that, and finally got on there. And the lady said, yeah, we're having outages throughout the system, system-wide, and that's why it didn't come up. Go back another day and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, this is really a pain in the dick. I need to return this thing because I have to get the original one rebuilt. And the reason why I went with a new one or already rebuilt one was because it was going to be cheaper. And, it's the same Rochester Quadrajet, so otherwise, just do that. Well, I ended up going back a couple days later, and now George was there yet again, and he punched it up and came up. He says, there, now we can process the refund. So I said, let me talk to the manager. I said, this should have been returned a couple days ago, and I shouldn't have had to come back for this. And she says, listen, I'm really sorry, but I can't do anything for you. I said, I'm just looking for like a $25 gift card for my trouble, having to come back in that. Nope, sorry, can't do anything. But if you call the 800 number, well, I was even more pissed, but at least I got my refund. So I came home, I went on the online chat. Fortunately, this time only 10 minutes. And I went on there and I spoke to them, told them the story. And the lady said, okay, we apologize. I basically worded it in such a way to say, you've done a disservice to one of your customers, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to correct that. Which is basically a nice way of saying, you fucked up, pay me, bitch. So anyway, she says, I'll give you a $20 gift card. I said, make it 25. She said, nope, 20 is the highest I can go. I said, all right, fine, we'll do 20, no problem. So I got my $20 gift card, and that was that. Meanwhile, this was going on when the birthday series was happening, and Lexmark's 567 was over. So I said, this was the day I picked him up. I said, we got to take a ride out to the Carbinator place, which is about 18 miles from here. So we take a ride out there. And for my trouble, this happened. It may be hard to see, but there's a rock chip right there on the Big 6. Fortunately, that sits right behind the mirror, so I don't see it. But even so, just to fuck my life more, I got a goddamn rock chip. Now that the white balance is probably all fucked up, and will recorrect while I'm speaking, that happened. I go to the carb place, which was recommended to me, and this place was awesome. We walk in, nobody at the counter. Nobody else in the place, but nobody at the counter. Hear a voice from the back. I'll be with you in just a moment. All right, no problem. Meanwhile, I had the old carb, the original carb, that I put on the counter. He comes out from the back, and this is all they do is carbs, So he's walking from the back up to the counter without even looking at the thing and inspecting it. He says, wow, that's off an old Bluick. Oh, shit. Well, maybe we got somebody who knows what the hell is going on. All right, so I need it rebuilt. And he says, well, this fuel fitting does not look correct. Let me take a look. He reaches right under the counter. He had a wrench there, and he took it right off on the counter. Didn't even shake hands with the guy. He doesn't even know my name. He doesn't even know what car. He knows it's an old Buick. And eventually I told him everything and that. But anyway, put the wrench on there. He takes the fuel thing out. Hi, Lion. It's Lion. Lion boy. Anyway, he takes the thing out, and he says, this fitting is an original. This fitting was put in here because the threads in the carb where this thing threads in are stripped. I said, huh? what the fuck does this mean now? Like, because I'm like, I can't get a carb because that one didn't fit. The other one is supposed to not be the right one. What am I going to fucking do? But fortunately, he had a solution for that. He took it out. He said, this fitting, you see how it has these notches on it? That actually cuts like new threads in this thing, and it works one time. You put it in, and it kind of reams out the threads for you, and it'll get you down the road, and you'll be all right. But next time, you know, you got to address it. You can't just put another one of these in, and you'll be all right. I said, so what do we do? He says, well, what I'm going to have to do is put a helicoil in there and, you know, bore it out, rethread it, put a helicoil in there, and then we can put the right fitting in, and that'll be the right one. So that'll be extra. How much extra? He's like, $15. I said, all right, we can work with that. You know, I was expecting like 45, 50, 60 bucks, something like that. But nope, 15 bucks. I said, sure, no problem. So anyway, dropped it off. He said, I'll have it ready later in the week. And he got it done. And the next week, because everybody was over for the party and blah, 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 and I took Lex back on Monday, and now it's like Tuesday or something, we take a ride out there. So I go out there, I pay the guy. Oh, and by the way, when I left it with him, they do business the old school way. He got a little paper hang tag with a wire on it that he just attaches to the carb, just wraps around the throttle linkage on it. And he had that, and he wrote down my name, my phone number, the kind of car it was, you know, full rebuild, helicoil, blah, blah. And that was it. I said, do you give me a receipt or paperwork or something? He says, nope, take one of my cards right there. Wow, doing business the old school way. He doesn't want money up front. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want that. He says, just give me the thing. Let me fucking work on it, and we'll deal with it. And he told me the price, which was about 90 bucks more than the carb itself was. And those who are privy to this information can look up on Advanced Auto what a carb might cost for the car if you want to know the amount. Anyways, that was it. He gave me nothing. He did business the old school way. And when I came in, I was like, well, maybe we can do business the old school way. I said, he said, it'll be X amount. I said, what does cash do for you? He said, that'll keep you at that price. I won't charge you tax. I said, good deal. And I have the cash with me, of course, because that's what I wanted to do. You know, I could have put it on the credit card and gotten the points, but it was better. You know, I saved more money not paying the tax than the money I would have gotten in rewards on the card paying the tax. So that was the better deal. A couple of dollars, like $9 or something, whatever. But it's still $9 saved. Okay, so now the carb is rebuilt. This thing came back to me. It looked like it was out of a fucking showroom. I couldn't believe how nice the carb looked. I said, oh, this is going to be awesome. It'll bolt right back on, and everything will be all set, and everything's good. The Bluick is still over at my dad's house. Now, sometime in the interim, this whole shit, by the grace of God, he was able to find this thing and get it hooked with something and move it over to the opening from which it fell in. And then he got a hook on it, held it with the hemostat, got a hook on it, and was able to finally pull this thing out. And we're all set, right? No. I got the new grommet. That came in. I had picked that up, and I had dropped that off by him. The PCV valve would not go in the new grommet either. So basically what we needed was a drill bit to ream out the center hole of this grommet, which was just too small. And the reason for this is because China. The fucking grommet is made in China. And just like when you buy something on eBay or Amazon, please allow 1 to 2 millimeters difference for manual measure or something like that. Just all this bullshit, and it just wouldn't fit. So I had to go to Harbor Freight and get a $37 pack of drill bits called Silver and Deming drill bits. That's not a brand. That's a type of drill bit that's used in like drill presses. They're really fat bits. We needed like I think a 1/2 inch bit or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but Anyway, I had to go and buy that, so I'm going to have to return that to Harbor Freight. And we were able to take the old grommet that we retrieved and ream that out as a test, and then the new grommet, we reamed that out. We said, okay, that should work now, and we're all set. And we got the new grommet in. That wasn't anywhere near of a pain in the ass as it was previously. Getting it out and putting it back in and all kinds of, so it wasn't a big deal. So we got that set, and then with a lot of pressure and holding it and praying, the PCV valve popped in, and that is never coming out again, because we don't want to go through this bullshit again. PCV valve is in, carb, put it right on, it sits on the car right, we bolt it down, everything's all set, and now of course the neighbor comes by to dick around, but we said, all right, we're just going to ignore him. We said, we don't have time for you now. So here we go. Priming the carb does nothing at this point because there's no fuel up there, so it's not going to do anything, so it's going to require a lot of cranking. So anyway, I primed it, just trying. We could have squirted fuel in the carb, but we decided to just give it a shot. I turned the key, took like a solid 5 seconds, and it fired up. And it ran worse than ever before. This was sort of to be expected, though, because you do have to dial in the carb. Okay, now I'll talk about that in a minute. But it was misfiring like hell. Like, this thing did not want to fucking run. It was just, you heard the exhaust, it was awful. Just not fucking running right. But I said, all right, let's, hopefully it'll smooth out. And within a minute or so, it smoothed out some. Still not running quite right, because, again, it's not dialed in. So now there's a couple of mixture screws on there. What I'm going to do now is go out to the car, and I'm going to show you the carb and the mixture screws and explain how this all is supposed to work and what the end result will be. So if you remember what the carb used to look like, here's what it looks like now. Wow, what a fucking difference, right? This is the original carb that's been rebuilt. So that's on there, so now it's running like a bag of shit, and now you have to adjust the mixture screws. There's one there, right under the hose. This big hose is the PCV hose, and next to that, I don't know if you could see, right under the fuel where that goes in, there's another screw there. So basically what you do is, with it running, you go in there and you start turning these screws. You do them one at a time, you don't have to go back and forth, and you just turn one side until the engine runs the fastest. And as you turn it, it's going to run faster and faster and faster until finally it'll start to slow down. You back it off right till it ran the fastest, then you go to the other screw. And you do exactly the same thing. You start screwing it down, it's going to run faster and faster still. And once you get that running the absolute fastest, you go and turn it back just so it's running the absolute fastest it was, and then you're all set. Then you adjust the idle screw. So we hooked a tack up to the ignition coil right there, had that set. We also had a vacuum gauge just for fun. And now you adjust the idle screw, and you can turn that down to lower the idle, or turn it up to raise the idle. And it's very simple how that works. Right over here is the stop, and that screw adjusts it. Now you'll notice it's maladjusted right now, because of course, fuck my life, everything sucks and nothing wants to work. Now I don't know if it's the linkage cable, that rod there, or anything else, so I'm going to pop that off quick and we'll see what the deal is. Another thing is this dash pod, or whatever it is, there's some sort of like rubber chamber in there and a spring, and this thing, which is not touching it, as you see right now, this can be adjusted via that thread. You can screw it in or out, and what this thing is supposed to do, it acts as a damper for it. So if you step on the throttle and it moves, this whole thing moves back like that. When you do that and you let go, if it snaps shut without that there, the flaps on the carb can close and it'll stall. So that dampens it and makes it go back slower, so that doesn't happen. So we screwed that like all the way in. It doesn't go any farther, and it's not even touching it now, but yet it's still maladjusted. So let me take that off. So now I have the linkage off, it just pops off. But you'll notice if I go to make it return as far as I can, it moves, but it doesn't stay. And when it moves, right in there will touch the screw, which is the idle speed control, and that'll make it idle where it's supposed to. So I'm left with a very heavy misfire when it starts, and it runs like shit for a bit until you go and rev it up, at which point then it'll smooth out and it'll run, but it'll idle too fast. If I hold it down, then it's good, and obviously I can't screw the screw in because that's going to make it go faster. When you move it that way, it goes faster. So now what we're going to do is finally fire this up and show you. Now this will start, although it won't run properly, it will start how it's supposed to. Press to the floor, so I'm going to do exactly what this linkage would do. Once. And look where it sits now. Like, that's actually supposed to be correct because that's going to run at fast idle now. So you see the gap there is a lot larger than it was. So with any luck, there's gas in the carb, one turn of the key, and it should fire right away. Alright, it should start, and then it's going to run like a bag of shit, even though everything is dialed in properly. Put the key on, wait for this truck to go by. We're good. Let's turn the key. Oh, it seems to be running all right today. Not really, there's still a misfire. And there's also some fine smoke, which means it may not be dialed in right. We got oil pressure, we're good. Let's rev it up a bit. Alright, it seems to be running alright now. Let's check the exhaust again. No, it still doesn't sound right. Let me play with it. Alright, that sounds a lot better now. Now I'll show you how it should be running. Because like I said, this doesn't go all the way back. That's where it should be idling. But I gotta hold it there. And when I let go, so I gotta go see the carb dip again. Now another problem I was having after the rebuild is if you go and close this flap, as I've done on video once or twice before, it should stall, but it wasn't doing that. It wasn't letting me close it all the way, but if I do it now, it seems to work. Well, yeah, it stalled out. I mean, that's what it's supposed to happen there, because we basically choked off its air supply. But yet, this thing still, something is not right. There's nothing to bolt down wrong. I mean, there's 4 holes, it bolts right up. This one sit flat on the engine, and the throttle moves. It just, you know, like it doesn't make any sense. But we'll fire it up again just for fun. Moved the throttle so it had excess fuel in there, which is why it didn't start immediately. But again, it should run there. So I don't know what the hell is going on. Now it seems to be running alright, and this was really odd. Now it's on the stop, right where it should be. It goes right down, and I can't move it back any further. This happened when I left my dad to bring the car back home. After a few blocks, it warmed up enough, and the thing came back. Maybe that's normal, where it'll still... Is the choke hanging up or something? I don't know. The choke on this is called a divorced choke. The choke is this red lever that goes down in there, and there's just a spring coil in there, bimetallic strip, and that moves these levers and does shit and makes it, I don't know. I've never had a carb do that before, where it actually stayed running fast and then eventually would allow you to go slower. I don't know. It's odd. But let's see if the misfire still happens, and I think it does. There's not much to see as much as there is to listen. It starts right up, it's quiet. It's quiet. After I put the carb on there and went around the block with it by my dad, we came back and shut it off and cleaned up the tools, and when I restarted it, I was like, holy shit, is it running? It's running. Put the fan on. Wait for it to clunk. There we are. Put the headlights on. They flip down. Put the high beams on. Step on the brake. So now the brake lights are on. And now I'll shift it in reverse, so that'll slow the engine down because of the transmission and the reverse lights. It's sort of shaky. You know, perhaps I don't have the idle set where it should be, but it's a bit shaky, but it's running. I'm hearing a misfire start, but also, yeah, there it was. The fan is running slow, and look what happens if I put the blinker on. See, the light's on, but there's not enough current for it to flash. If I rev it slightly, now it'll flash slow. Let's see what happens if I let go. Alright, there's just enough now. Is this whole misfire due to perhaps too low of a voltage? Because I got a story about that also, which I'll tell now. So let's go and turn that off, put it in park, shut the blower, shut the lights, take off the high beams, lights went back up, blower shut, and let me shut it off now because it doesn't need to be running. I had the air cleaner back on, of course, because, you know, I don't want to run it too long without it. But I'm wondering if maybe we're having a voltage problem, such as either an alternator or a battery, or maybe the voltage regulator that we put in. Now, if you remember early on with the Buick, if I left the battery hooked up overnight, it was stone cold dead by the next day. This is the same battery I got with the car, and I don't remember the date on it. It's not that old. So anyway, that's all good. And XJO81X came, and he replaced the voltage regulator that I bought online, and that solved the problem. Now, before I knew it was that, it was October, of course, a couple of years ago, and I had to get the car inspected. So here it is in the morning. I got to go out to my dad because that's where the place is that we use. He's not going to bust balls about anything. So we said, okay. So meanwhile, I had a light bulb or two out in the back. So I went and I replaced those, and I had the headlights on, or the lights on, to ensure everything was working. Walked around the car, made sure the blinkers worked in that. And it was colder out. I knew the battery had gone dead 2-3 times before, at least, maybe 5, 6, 7, I don't know, since before I got it. I only killed it once, and then I learned to disconnect it until the voltage regulator. But anyway, everything was good, and I went out there, and the car just didn't seem to run right. For whatever reason, there's something, it just didn't seem right. It seemed like it sort of lacked power, and I was on the parkway the whole time, and the ammeter gauge on the dashboard never indicated discharging. It just stayed right in the center where it normally does. So I said, gee, it's just running like shit. It's probably because it's October, it's cold, something like that. So I get to my dad, still running. He comes outside. All right, let's go. We go to the place, and he had his car to be inspected also. So he got in his car, and we both drove there. I parked the car, on the street because there was nowhere in the guy's lot for it. And he inspected my dad's car. That passed. Everything's good. And he says, all right, go bring the other car over. So now it's like a block down. So I get in the car, you know, I get to the car, I turn the key, and it goes, click, 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 click. Oh, shit. How is the battery dead? Well, I turned the key again, and this time it was able to fire. It cranked over just enough that it fired, and I pulled it in, and I got to the station's lot, and I shut it off and disconnected the battery just because, and that. Well, anyway, he did the inspection. There's no emissions required, so he basically looked at it, punched it up in the computer, and magic, everything had passed. So meanwhile, I go to try to restart the car, and it just clicks. It won't start. So he says, oh, well, let me get my jump pack. He gets his jump pack similar to the Harbor Freight one I have that has that little meter on it. And he hooks it up, turn the key, it fires up. He hits the voltmeter thing, and it's reading only about 9 volts. He said, your battery's not being charged. That's why that happened. What, did the alternator just die? So anyway, we were able to limp it back to my dad, just made it there, shut it down. We took the alternator off. Meanwhile, his cat is in the vet because of that, because it's October, and his cat was ill. Fortunately, that turned out all right. Anyways, it was a shit day altogether. We take the alternator out. We bring it to Advance Auto, I think it was. We bring it to AutoZone, and they said, oh, this is Advance's thing. And I had a video on this showing the receipt that the machine prints out stating the alternator is good. So we talked to the guy, and the guy said, no, it's going to be the voltage regulator. I don't have one, but I can get it by tomorrow. Well, that didn't help me any. Anyway, it ended up that we came back. My dad has a battery charger that plugs in, you know, so we put the battery on charge. Meanwhile, we reinstalled the alternator because that tests good. And he said, why don't you plug and unplug the connector? This was still with the old voltage regulator. Plug and unplug the connector on that. So I did that, and we let the battery charge for a bit, and we said, all right, we'll try it. I turn the key, it fires up, and the ammeter goes way up, charging, definitely charging, putting voltage in the battery. This battery was low, low, low. And anyway, soon after all of that story, we replaced it. But is it not regulating the voltage properly? Is the engine running too slow that the alternator can't supply enough voltage? Are we getting the battery low enough or a voltage low enough? And I didn't hook a multimeter up and test this because I need 2 people, one to put everything on in the car and hold the brake in that. But are we getting so low of a voltage, perhaps, that the ignition coil isn't getting enough voltage, and therefore, because of that, it can't fire a hot enough spark or any spark at all, and we have this random misfire? Now, I had my dad test for this by disconnecting the wire from the alternator, but, like, I don't know if he's getting senile or what, and then we disconnected the battery, which you can do on an old car while it's running. You can't do that today, and, you know, stuff like that. It was odd. We actually did that at the shop when it was being inspected. He took the battery cable off while it was running, and the engine sped up. So he said what's happening is it's being loaded down by the dead battery, but if it stays running, when you disconnect the cable from the battery, then that means the alternator is working. And that proved, yes, it was working. But are we getting into that really low voltage situation where the ignition coil just doesn't have enough chooch to fire? Could it be that dumb? Like, am I just looking at an alternator or a battery? Or maybe a replacement voltage regulator? I don't know. I need to do some testing on that. But I need to get this carb information worked out. So I'm going to go back and see the carb dick and have him just fine-tune it in that. And I'll ask him why the throttle kind of sticks open like that. Very, very strange. Anyway, I know this was a really long video, but the reason the car is on the street is because I'm going to wash it now, and it's just better than being on the grass when I go and wash it. So that's why it's here. And this was, by the way, when I first started it, that was an absolute cold start. It had sat for like 2 or 3 days. One pump to the floor, which is what I did when I moved the throttle, turned the key, and it fired right up. That's how it's supposed to be. And I think any millennial would even be able to do that. It's sort of like the unlock screen on their fucking phone. You know, you hit the button to turn the phone on, then you do the unlock bullshit, and now you are in your phone, you do whatever you have to do. Same kind of thing. The unlock code for the engine is step on the gas first before you turn the key. I think any millennial could figure that out. So with a properly working Carbinator, it should run right. Now, I don't know what this misfire in the very beginning is. Again, are we dealing with a voltage issue? I don't really think so. But again, I got to hook a meter up and see. If you have any thoughts whatsoever, I'm kind of at my wit's end. This misfiring shit has been going on since March of 2018. And then the engine blew up in September of 2018 and was rebuilt. Then I have the Carbinator redone, and we're still having fucking problems. And I'd like to put this fucking myth to bed already and get this car running properly. Please, if anybody has information, suggestions, something, let me know. I appreciate it. So that was the story of the Carbinator that went flat. Hopefully we can get it recarbonated by the Carbinator Dick, and then we'll figure out what this misfire bullshit is. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.